Welcome to day 3. We're going to hang tight for a minute and wait for everyone to jump on. But hello, Facebook, hello, Instagram, and hello, TikTok. I am so excited for today, as I always am, because I love sharing energy and space with you all. And I think today is going to be such an integral piece to your manifestation process because it is everything to do with counter manifesting, which if we are not getting what we want in life, if we're not having the emotional experiences that we want in life, we are in fact counter manifesting. And so I want to shine a light on one of the biggest reasons as to why you are counter manifesting. Now we're going to dissect a few pieces, but again, as always, all of the deets are in the 8 Secrets to Powerful Manifesting. People are pouring into the group. I can't see all until like after publishing date, which is tomorrow, y'all. So you better be celebrating with me. And if I can selfishly ask that when you get your book, that you take a little picture with your cute face and tag me in it, or put hashtag 8 Secrets. We've got some really cool opportunities actually coming out soon about that. But I'll wait until we have all the details together to fully share it with you. But I'm so excited. Shall we? I'll take a couple deep breaths because I love doing it. Three is my magic number. It always gets me like perfectly into the state I want to be in to be able to deliver information to y'all. So thank you guys. Oh, you guys are too kind. I got dressed up for you. My husband's like, you look so, he's giving me little sweet things. And I'm like, this dress is coming off after the live because I've got an event I got to go speak at. And sitting down crisscross applesauce with the dress, it's a little bit difficult sometimes. So this is for you all. This is all for you. It's very cute. Okay, you guys ready to rock and roll? First of all, let me know where you're tuning in from. And over the past 2 days, I know a lot of y'all have been already kind of following the journey that we've been going through together. What's been a really big aha? What's something that you haven't heard before that's utilized or now you're going to utilize in manifestation? Or maybe you're like, I've heard it before, but finally it clicked when you said it, Mandy. I would love to hear that as well. So today we're talking about, again, dips. You guys have heard me talk about the word triggers a lot, right? And so the reason I'm calling it dips today is that dips are the actual piece that causes the sabotage. Triggers in and of themselves don't have to cause sabotage. And moving forward, not just the counter manifestations, I would also be talking about positive triggers, right? Because triggers are just what? Feedback, right? But the dip that occurs or can occur due to a trigger is what shifts our vibrational state, shifts our mental state, or and changes our emotions or floods our body with different emotions or the neurohormones that are related to it. And that's what causes the actual dip. So the way I want to talk about this, I wrote just a few little things down to keep myself succinct, is first the ceiling and the basement. Who here has heard me talk about the ceiling and the basement? If you heard it from someone else, let it go right now, because a lot of the things I say, I'm saying them in a different way, or regardless of if I use a word, there's a different energy behind it. So sometimes I'm like, Mandy, that's probably not even the right word to use, but I know that if you guys are tapped into my energy, you know exactly from the probably going to want healthy relationship or whatever it is, but you internalize and you kind of blame yourself. That was me. Even when it wasn't my fault, I assumed responsibility in probably a really inappropriate way, in the sense that I couldn't see things clearly because I was just, my self-reflection also included shaming. Like, Mandy, you could do better. How dare you? You're such a loser, whatever it is. But I would always be dipping because I couldn't manage my triggers, because I couldn't manage what life was throwing at me. And, ultimately life was a reflection of what was going on internally, but I couldn't see that in fullness, right? Connecting those dots, that takes a pretty high level of consciousness. So I certainly didn't have that for most of my life, at least not in the moments where I was most lost, right? It's kind of like a fog. And so I noticed, though, that when things would get really good, I would sabotage it. And when things would get bad enough, I would change. So your ceiling is when things get so good or are working out so well, or you become so, hopeful, you're vibing high, that all of a sudden everything just kind of falls out from underneath you. You may or may not think that you sabotaged it. That's important in the sense of assuming responsibility, because ultimately there's something inside of us that does typically cause that shift. But we just want to make sure the dip doesn't happen. But that ceiling, again, is it's gotten so good and we're running away from it. It's no longer certain, or we're afraid that we'll get it and we'll lose it. For some reason, we are afraid of what is to come, even if it could be absolutely amazing. And then our basement. So I literally imagined a house, right? I'm like, I can go up to the ceiling, or I could climb down the stairs and I can go to the basement, just literally up and down, keeping it simple, vibrationally speaking. And the basement is what I would call rock bottom. It is how bad does something have to get before you will make a drastic change, or before you will shift the energy into something lighter. So basically, you're just allowing that roller coaster to continue to dip until you hit, like, there's the only way to go is up, and then you take action, or something changes miraculously, or whatever it is. But you've hit your basement. So I always use this example because it's so simplistic. I was actually just talking to a beautiful family member. If you're watching this, I love you, because I know you've been watching these. And I was talking about it last night. But when we look at our ceiling in our basement, right? So I use this example. So in my relationships in the past, before I had my glorious, sexy, amazing, beautiful hearted husband, I had, you like that, babe? I had a lot. I know you're listening, especially when I'm saying those words. I had a really dysfunctional reality in regards to relationships. Now, these were friendships and intimate relationships, but I'll talk about intimate relationships just to keep things more succinct. And so my ceiling in those intimate relationships, as well as with friendships for this go, at least for the ceiling, was if they were super healthy, if they wanted me to open up a ton emotionally, if they had no drama, no issues that they were bringing to the table, because I thought I was coming to the table with so many, I literally would not be attracted to that relationship. And I would sometimes run away from it, or I would sabotage it and step out of it. Those friends weren't fun, or those relationships, he just wasn't for me, or something like that. Ultimately, I didn't have any attraction to anyone that I dated. I just was attracted to the unhealed wounds within myself that I was finding and trying to resonate with in other people. My husband's probably the first person that I was genuinely attracted to. Sorry to all of my previous folks, but if I really look at it from an authenticity and like a depth of love, that's true. It was just a part of myself, unhealed, working with an unhealed part of my friends, or, my relationships and my intimate relationships. So anyways, that ceiling was someone who was actually great. Like, if I had met my husband years ago, like 15 years ago, I don't even think we would have recognized each other's souls, because we were both, lost in that time. But that wouldn't have happened. It just, the timing wasn't right. And relationships I realized was a few things, but one of the biggest ones was I had to get physically abusive for me to leave that relationship. Or they had to cheat on me. They had to cheat on me a lot of times. Good, you're speaking to me right now. I'm realizing so much. Good. Stories are so powerful, right? And so I saw, because then you feel the essence and the embodiment of it, right? The growth through it. And so it was like my basement in relationships was so low. I had to be so miserable. And because I had abandonment issues, I didn't like abandoning people. So every time I'd leave, then they could get me back by making me feel bad enough, because guilt was also something that would cause me to dip. So it was just this cycle of, dysfunction. And unfortunately, the good relationships I would sabotage or I just simply wasn't interested in. And the dysfunctional ones, I would sit there and pretend like I wanted to be amazing and beautiful and perfect. But it was, again, talking about yesterday, all of my perceived rewards of being emotionally unavailable myself. I looked for that dysfunction in other people. You guys are like, yeah, I totally get it. Change it. We're going to talk about how we change it. And so, regardless of where your ceiling in your basement is, you do need to know what they are. So, this is an exercise. This is a piece of homework. If you guys can do it now, freaking fantastic. I would suggest, sometimes I'm like, don't take notes. Like, just listen to my words. This would be one of the times where you might want to pop out some notes or listen to it now and then watch this again so that you can, write things down. This resonates with my past and what I'm healing. Beautiful. I'm so glad. Okay. So we're hitting a nail on the head today. I can already feel it. So, what was I say? I can't read your guys' comments until the end. Otherwise, I think about you guys and then I feel your energy and then I want to run off on a tangent. Okay, so write this down if this feels right. So ceiling and basement, right? Now you can take this into kind of silos. So you could do love. You could do relationships. You could do money, you could do career, you could do purpose work. You can have different compartments because your ceiling in your basement may be quite different for each one. But what we're looking for is, when does it get so good that all of a sudden it falls out from underneath us, whether we can equate it to ourselves or something seemingly outside of us? And then when does it get so bad, or how bad does it have to get before I'm willing to take the action I need to take to get it to start changing? Now, again, you're going to find a lot of information here. Now, this is actually simplistic, y'all. Finding what is your ceiling and basement will be the most interesting part. For some things, you might have to kind of walk through it over the next couple of days and be like, oh my gosh, I noticed myself getting triggered. And then I started to dip when I started thinking about getting the promotion. Or when my boyfriend or girlfriend started to dote on me a little bit too much, I started getting uncomfortable and shutting down. And it was too much love at first. I was like, I'm not used to this. Like, can't you talk badly to me and tell me how stupid I am, or something like that? And thank goodness I had the tools that I give you guys throughout these days and throughout the book, because I probably would have sabotaged the most incredible relationship of my life. I would have pushed my soulmate away. But I remember thinking, this is so much good. And then I would shut down. But then I would work through it instead of continue the dip all the way down to the basement to where totally sabotaged it. It's, unreconcilable. And now I'm willing to do something about it. But how many things do you lose in the process of the dip because we're not changing sooner, right? So the whole idea of the ceiling and basement is when you hit that ceiling, and usually the only reason you start to dip is because you've hit a ceiling, believe it or not. It's usually, otherwise you're already on the ride down to the basement. But usually something gets so good and then you sabotage it because that trigger caused for you to dip because you didn't interrupt it. You didn't shift the energy around it. You just rode with that part of yourself and continued to tell yourself something that was untrue or certainly doesn't serve you on the highest good. And then you rode that roller coaster all the way down. So back to the ceiling, right? So we just want to bust it like 2 steps up. Or if it feels right and you don't think that you'll sabotage it, then blow the roof off. Absolutely. But you got to know what causes you to start that dip. So when does the ceiling hit so high, you're like, and you nosedive down, right? Okay, now going down to the basement. When do things get so bad that you're finally willing to do the thing you should have done a long time ago? Left the relationship, spoken your truth, put up healthy boundaries, started your purpose work, whatever it is, right? So when I look back, before, for those of you who don't know my story, TikTok, you guys are really new to my story in a lot of ways. Instagram and Facebook, you guys have known me longer. But when I first started Authentic Living, which is the company I have now, I was broke. I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't start Authentic Living then, I should say. I started my purpose work, and Authentic Living was birthed because it was on the vibration of, what I was creating at that point after. But I left a job that wasn't for me. I left, that obviously that relationship, and I hope the best for him wherever he's at now. I left where I lived. I was living in Florida. Everything changed. And I said, but mind you, I hit my basement, and my basement was so low. The guy had thrown glass at me, and I was so unhappy in my job, really at no fault of theirs. I think I had a great manager. But it was just sucking my soul, and I was just so unhappy. But what was happening was my purpose work was calling me. My authentic self, which I had found a few months prior and then walked away from again because that relationship had followed me and I just lost myself again. I was at my ultimate basement where literally the only way to go was up in all areas. And I don't wish that for anyone. And that's why I talk about the basement, because I'm like, if I could have, and if you can get to the few steps before you hit your basement and you do the same actions that you would have done once you hit your basement, you won't dip as low. You won't be in such a low vibration. Your energy and your mental state won't suffer so much and be on that vibratory level, that reality that has a lot of pain and a lot of things that are included in that basement. We don't want to dip that low anymore. And the way that we don't is we choose to make change sooner. Because this is the part where you guys are going to write this down too. In your basement, you're going to see some steps prior, and there'll be a theme to it. Like if you're looking at love, if I look at that relationship, he was so verbally abusive for so long that of course I should have guessed that it was going to become physical at some point, right? He was explosive. I knew that. But my basement, my self-love, all of these things were so low that it could be no other way in those moments because I wasn't willing to make any change. But if I were to go a few steps up, I should have left the first time he got super drunk and said horrible things to me, right? Because then I eventually tried to do the same. And I'm not very good at duplicating that, but I lost myself. Though that should have been my basement. Now, oh my gosh, would that totally be my basement, right? My husband, I don't think he's ever even called me one bad name, even if he's kidding. That's not in my reality. Puh, yuck, period, right? But it once was my everyday. And something that one of my friends actually said, she's a staff member and a friend. She's like, sometimes when you get used to something, even if it's dysfunctional, it becomes so normal. You don't realize how weird it is until you stop doing it, right? So regardless of if you're like, yeah, but I'm surviving right now in this space, that's not the point. We're not here to survive. We need to move into thriving. And the way that we do that is not allowing for ourselves to dip into places where we simply don't belong. Because again, you guys remember what I said yesterday, most of the pain we experience is because we're not being ourselves, because we're not being authentic to our needs and to what we can be for ourselves and for the world and for those that we love and blah, 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 blah. So even feel free to post this up. I want to hear this, guys. What do you think some of your ceilings are? When do you start sabotaging? And put the area. So be like love or my job or, wanting to start a business, purpose work, helping the world, whatever it is. Self-love. I think love and self-love they deserve their own silos, right? But go ahead and put what are your ceilings and also what are your basements, right? Come back to this post as well and post them if that feels right. But what are they? And then what are you going to do moving forward to ensure you don't dip that low again or you bust through that ceiling? Does that make sense? Cool. You guys are Instagram's going wild with it. Woo! Okay. So as we talked about though yesterday, just as a reminder, why we dip. We don't dip because the universe is out to get us or we are doomed or cursed. We dip because of our past, because of our programming, because of our perceptions, because of what we allow in our lives. Y'all, who are my fellow people pleasers? I always say, like, I hate labels, but dang, I sure fit that one quite well. I am recovered, what is it? A recovered people pleaser, a recovering, whatever. But I had to absolutely look into that because one of the reasons that I would hit the basements was because I was people pleasing, because I wanted everybody to be happy and I could handle so much. I'm highly functioning in stress, which is unfortunate because then I can process way more of it than sometimes I should. So I had to change it. And one of the biggest things that helped me lift that basement was boundaries. I needed to have proper boundaries with myself, with my thoughts, and with others. Oh, that's why. It's because it's windy too. Anyway, with others. Absolutely. And oh my gosh, that opens up a whole can of worms too, right? You're like, yeah, but will people still love me? Or, people don't like when you change, especially if you're filling the cup up every day, or you're a people pleaser, or you're normally easily manipulated, and all of a sudden you're like, sorry, I'm stepping out of this. So build those boundaries around ensuring you're not going to go all the way back down to your typical basement. Because think about it from a vibrational level. If your ceiling in your basement is here now, and then you raise it up 2, and then you're like, oh, these no longer work for me either, I'm going to raise it up 2 more. Eventually, your basement is higher than your old ceiling. I always say that. I'm like, my basement now is so many floors up from my old ceiling, it couldn't even kiss its ass. I have such a different perception of reality, of who I am, obviously how I manage and handle my dips. And I don't allow for myself, and not like allow, like I don't process what's happening when I dip, or I ignore it or shove it under the rug. Obviously, you guys know me well enough by now that that's never a solution. But I do not allow, in the highest good and in with using my tools, to get myself into a basement, because I know better. Because I know what steps take me down to my basement, and I catch that sucker at the earliest step that I can. And here's the missing piece. You do what you would do at your basement. This takes courage, okay? This takes total courage. You do what you would have done at your lowest basement, at your rock bottom. You do it at that step that you've chosen as your new basement. You still go as hard at it as you would if you were at rock bottom. Okay, cool? Feeling good? Okay, last piece that I want to give you guys is cool. So micro being small and macro being, big. So sometimes we'll experience such a small dip. We talked about day 1 energetic check-ins, right? So you're going to, hopefully, you're using all of these pieces in conjunction, right? So as you're doing those energetic check-ins, you might be like, wow, I wasn't really dipping at my last check-in, but now I checked in again. I feel like I've dipped quite a bit. Those are micro triggers. They almost snuck by where you didn't even realize that you were starting to get thrown off of your natural or authentic vibrational state. Now, the macro triggers are the ones that slap you upside the head, total flood of hormones, and you're like, you can't act the same way that you felt 5 seconds ago, right? So I just want to drop kind of that lesson there, and just pay attention to, and I'll tell you what to do with each of them, pay attention to when you may just have tons of micro triggers throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so low. When did I dip? Well, it's because these all kept compiling, and you weren't doing anything with them, so you kept dipping, right? And then the macros, obviously, that they throw you off right away. And so hopefully you process them right away. So what do you do with the micros? If you're not, obviously we want to condense the time frame in which you become aware of them, so that we, even if it's just a little 5-second thing, we're dealing with them, right? We're like, oh, I just realized that kind of bothered me, the way that girl looked at me. Maybe she's having a bad day. It's not about me. Cool. It's gone. Versus you come to the end of the day and you're like, I feel ugly or something like that. And then you look back and you're like, oh, it's because I thought that girl looked at me funny, but I didn't deal with it in the moment. And then I went into, the bathroom and I was washing my hands, and then I realized I had, lipstick on my teeth, or I had a pimple or something. And then I further solidified it. And then when I got home, my boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse didn't hug me the way they normally do. And I made it about myself, but really they had a rough day, right? So we tell ourselves something that isn't true, but they're small enough to where we're like, kind of bothered me, but then at the end of the day, we feel like poop, right? So those are the micros. So instead, we want to start building awareness, which happens, over time, or if you're doing the energetic check-ins, you'll know right away because you're looking back and seeing, okay, what happened in the past hour that bothered me? And y'all, just asking yourself that question is sometimes 99% of the solution. It's just putting awareness into it to be like, oh, that's kind of silly of me. That was odd that I made such a big deal out of that. Or, I choose to release it. Let me take 3 deep breaths. Let me go do a meditation. On my lunch break, I'm going to go, shoo bug, go somewhere. I'm going to, take a walk, whatever it is. You're going to do something that allows for you to process that little bit of energy that you got, so it doesn't turn into, it's a molehill, but it doesn't turn into a mountain. And then what do you do with macro triggers? We've been talking about this. We're going to talk about this a lot more in the next couple days, but just to kind of drop a little thought here is you're going to do something to interrupt the energy. What would you normally do when you get a macro trigger and you dip massively? What do you normally do? You do the opposite now. You do something that energetically feels equal and opposite, right? So if you're like normally, I don't know, normally when my spouse, I'm just thinking of stupid stuff, when my spouse doesn't unload the dishwasher, when I had asked them this morning, which my husband and I both don't unload the dishwasher. This is not a very realistic thing here. But, they didn't, and I had asked them to do it, and I feel so uncared for. And for some reason, you're just like, rah, rageful, or your boss comes in and like explodes on you. And normally you're like, let me completely shut down. Let me go into my people pleaser. Let me ignore this person, or let me try to get back at them, quietly by not being intimate with them, or by messing up on a proposal for my boss, or whatever it is. Instead, you'll say, what would I love to do? What would create a better outcome right now? What would shift my energy? And it may be, let me write a letter to my boss and burn it because, they're not going to hear it. He or she may not be receptive. Or maybe I do need to have a conversation and let me speak my truth. As I burp, I always burp when I'm speaking truth. Let me speak my truth. Or, let me go have a conversation with my spouse, or let me realize that maybe they had a bad day too, and get out of my own, woe is me perception, whatever it is. Obviously, you could go a million routes with this, but you want to do something that shifts your energy, makes you feel empowered. Keep everybody's, well-being into account. That's my personal rule. Like, you're not here, I hate when people go, I'm speaking my truth, but really they're just like, it's a persona and they're just exploding on you, and they call it speaking their truth. Really, you're like, oh, no, this ain't authentic at all, because you're not assuming any responsibility. Or, you could just feel the energy of like, let's not call it speaking your truth, because truth is like coming from an authentic space, I perceive. But it's okay if your persona has a need that needs to be heard. I'm here for it. You got to be willing to grow through it too, right? So make sure, this is my rule, that you speak your truth in such a way that it feels authentic and it is, compassionate and considerate to all around, because it's not just about serving yourself. It's about serving everybody in the situation, because they're a part of it too. Does that make sense? Okay, so my last piece I want to impart on y'all for day 3 is proactive versus reactive. When we're talking about dips, one of the biggest things that ensure that especially those micro dips don't get us, is that we lean into being proactive about our self-care and our self-love. So post up a couple things that you do, and you can do proactively. Sometimes we don't fill up our cup until it is empty and we are dying of thirst. We have to stop that. That is a basement in and of itself. Your self-care, your self-love should have its own silo, and you should be understanding how to keep that sucker full. Keep it close to the ceiling. Have no ceiling on it if you can, right? No rules, no parameters, which is the whole thing, breaking rules. Huge freaking chapter on that, how to finally do it properly so it rewires your brain and your energy and everything that comes with it. But we want to make sure that we are proactive about filling up our cup, or proactive about being aware, doing energetic check-ins, proactive about being aware of what our dips are and catching them before they, slap down to the basement. Cool? Okay, so as a reminder, go out, get the 8 Secrets to Powerful Manifestation. Multiple books. That needs to be on a pre-order, so go do that today to get all of those bonuses. And those consist of tons of different lives, programs, different experiences. You can gift a book to someone else, and then they can get the live event. There's so many incredible opportunities at the8secrets.com. I am so excited, y'all. The launch day is tomorrow. I'm going to do a whole crab boil after. I got a ton of interviews all day long. But in the afternoon or the evening, we're going to do a little crab boil and celebrate this incredible labor of love, all of this work and love for humanity that went into this. And I'm really excited about it. So snag the book. And while you guys are here too, I'll just show you guys how cute this darn thing is. So at the Heartland, we have, I own a retreat center, and we have all of these different notes. This is obviously just a little snippet on the front and back of a couple people's, but everybody gets a wooden plaque before they leave, and they get to write a note to the version of them that showed up at the Heartland versus what they know now. And it is the coolest thing. It's like, I am enough to succeed beyond my expectations. Get ready to soar. Live in the moment. What you speak, you create. Set an intention. Remember, you are enough and always have been. I feel who I am. Find your voice. Like, there's just, this is, you know, what authentic living does for people. This is the work. This is the work in action. And this book is so incredible in so many ways, to detangling the density, to understanding why you're counter manifesting, obviously how to manifest moving forward, tapping into your future self, the version of you that already has all the answers and is already living all that you want right now. You can literally get the answers in 5 seconds. And I show you how to do it in this book. So anyways, thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for joining me for day 3. Tomorrow, I will see you all for day 4 as usual. On Instagram and Facebook, look for my little thing that says day 3. Tomorrow it'll say day 4, and then I'll go live within the hour, so you know to be watching for your notifications to see that I pop up. And then TikTok, make sure that you find me on Instagram or Facebook. There's tons of content that I couldn't put on TikTok, of course, too, in those areas. So you'll find some incredible pieces of information that further drive all of the days that we're spending together home, and it'll be magic. Okay, that is it. Remember, the8secrets.com. I will see you all tomorrow. And in case no one has told you today, I love you. Bye. It's going to take me a minute, y'all. Sorry. There's lots of things to turn off. All right.